Hello, everyone, and welcome back for another episode of the Outdoor Adventure Series podcast. The Outdoor Adventure Series celebrates individuals and families, businesses, and organizations that seek out and promote the exploration, stewardship, conservation, access, and enjoyment of the outdoors. Today's episode is sponsored by Papa's Pilar Rum, and we are excited to have Steve Groth, Papa's Pilar CEO and Chief Strategist, join us on the Outdoor Adventure Series today. Steve has had a distinguished international career with a string of successful ventures to his credit. Steve possesses the unique ability to identify market gaps along with the strategic vision necessary to attack and exploit these opportunities. Steve founded Papa's Pilar in conjunction with Ernest Hemingway's estate in 2012, and he has gone on to launch new spirit brands, including the Hemingway Whiskey Company in 2022. Steve, it's a pleasure to have you on the Outdoor Adventure Series podcast.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
I have to say, first off, Ernest Hemingway, it brought back shades of being back in school and all those novels that I had to read. And you also spoke to one of my loves is some good rum, sipping rum, as I like to call it. And now you've just mentioned the Hemingway Whiskey Company. So next to coffee, I think you're speaking my language here.
Exactly. Those are kind of the big three for me as well. Coffee, rum, and whiskey, but generally not at the same time. Maybe in sequence, but not at the same time.
I think I'm going to be talking to one of your mixologists on another episode, and I'm anxious to see how he mixes up some spirits with some other foods and beverages, and maybe even, I've heard of whiskey and coffee. I don't know about rum and coffee. I haven't tried that one yet.
Oh, yeah, it's fabulous.
Oh, excellent.
You guys are geniuses. It's nice to surround yourself with people that are way smarter than you. And in my case, that's a pretty low bar. So pretty much everybody's smarter than I am.
Come on now. Well, you were smart enough to get into this business, so I love it. For our listeners, if you could just give us a 30,000-foot view. I mean, as you and I were joking beforehand, you've had a lot of rodeos that you have ridden in, and if I had to say one thing, I would describe you in some ways as a serial entrepreneur. And so share a little bit about your background, and then let's dive into Papa's Pilar afterwards.
My background is I started off in finance. I like to say that I'm a recovering CPA. I worked for Deloitte, started their entertainment group, and then I think my career has never really. I like to tell people I think the common theme in my career is I'm fundamentally unemployable. So I don't make a good employee. So I started with in the entertainment business, and I worked in the live entertainment for a long time, and we sold our company to my partner and I to Live Nation. And then I moved to Eastern Europe when the wall fell, and moved to Warsaw, Poland, and built out a network of television channels with a guy named Bob Geldof who did Live Aid.
Oh, yeah.
And so Bob and I built that with a couple other partners, and then sold it to Viacom. And then I moved back to the United States, and together with another partner, consolidated and built a network of advertising and marketing companies. We bought 40 marketing companies, advertising, digital, PR, retail, sports, and so on, and built it into about $1 billion business and sold it to a group called Omnicom. And so that was my background. And in the music business, we owned 50 nightclubs, did 20 amphitheaters, did 1,000 tours a year, did every major tour. And so that was that piece of it. And in the marketing business, we had 700 clients, and a lot of them were spirits, beer, soft drink companies. And as I built that and sold it, there was I kind of migrated into I had this vision of retiring, but it never stuck. And so I was never really good at it, and my wife didn't like it. So I began to invest and advise different companies in different categories. And a partner and I, we got into, we financed a number of startups and built a technology accelerator, but we really had a, an affinity and something deep in our soul about consumer products that were built by craftsmen. And probably because I'm not a craftsman, I just love people that can make things, particularly sorting out and sifting out the unsung heroes and businesses and so on. And spirits was a really cool industry that had a lot of deep stories, and particularly dark spirits, rum and whiskey and so on. It's just a lot of fertile material for people that have an appreciation for brand and quality and history. And so my partner and I, who is a guy named Alex Bogusky, cover of Forbes, the creative mind of the decade, we just geeked out on the dark spirits area. We got into the spirits business, built a company that could incubate spirits. And so we went through a number of different brands that we looked at and worked on until we found the first brand we found was we founded was a brand called Angel's Envy Bourbon. And we found a guy named Lincoln Henderson, who was the inaugural member of the Bourbon Hall of Fame. He was retired. He invented Woodford Reserve, ran all of Brown-Forman's mastered distilling, coaxed him out of retirement. And it was a perfect example to take the quintessential craftsman and bring him to the forefront and make him a star. And my pitch to get him out of retirement was that I would put him in business with his son and his kids and build him a distillery in Kentucky. And so he decided that he would come out of retirement. He was a 2-time or 3-time cancer survivor at the time, but we were able to build a nice brand in conjunction with him. It grew, was a bit of a runaway train. We built a company around it and eventually sold it to Bacardi.
Okay.
But during that the growth period, a friend of mine was friends with the Hemingway family, and they saw Angel's Envy, and they asked us if we would be interested in working with them on a project to as a philanthropic vehicle to give money to literacy and conservation charities. And so that's how this all started. And essentially the spirits business for me was a bit of a hobby. It was kind of a really cool, deep brand geek thing that we were really into. But we were business guys. We had built business and infrastructure and sales teams and everything. So between the creative and the business side, and then you had the creation genius of the master distillers, we built these spirits brands. And as it relates to the Hemingway project, Ernest Hemingway was always somebody that was near and dear to my heart. I'm a Florida waterman, and all my partners and friends are. And so that combined with the brand geek in me and the deal junkie was just fun. And plus it was fun to just hang out and share stories with Patrick Hemingway, Ernest's only living son. And so we hit it off and the family hit it off. And so we decided to build a brand around that, which is the Hemingway persona, but also find that hidden craftsman that could bring it to life, because we knew we had the creative capabilities of making the brand famous if it was really an authentic and it had a reason to live. It had a reason to exist other than just Hemingway's name. And so we wanted to make it an authentic brand that was rooted in our relationship with the family and this kind of juxtaposition between this bigger than life personalities and also this really super deep craftsmanship. And so that's kind of the Hemingway persona in a nutshell. It's like the reason why Hemingway has really his brand has survived for so long was that he was this contradiction. He was this giant personality that was out in Africa and in Paris and everywhere else, but then he also would just zero in on being really good at this super technical craft that was much appreciated by the world. So we tried to build our brand around things like that, and create a product and a process and a personality that would pay homage to the Hemingway man and brand. And so we found a gentleman named Ron. Well, I didn't find him; I knew him for a long
Okay.
time. He was a legend in the distilling business. A guy named Ron Call, 45 years, 50 years in the business. Worked at Jim Beam for 20 years. Invented most of the brand, the expressions around cruise and rum. Ran big distilleries. But Ron in himself was a bit of a Hemingway. He's a cattle rancher in the morning, and then a master distiller in the afternoon and evening. And so I sat with him much like I did Lincoln, and talked to him about building a brand around Hemingway, and how we could incorporate him and his family. He's a seventh generation master distiller that goes back to the 1700s. His family does. And so between the Hemingways, my family, and the Call family's family, we thought that there was something really unique in that in that trifecta that we could bring to life, and hopefully somebody would appreciate it. We build brands that we like, and then hope
Sure.
somebody else likes them as well. And
Okay.
so anyway, that was the story of how that's my background, and that's the story of how the Hemingway brands came to life. And as you said, it's been 11 years now
Right. Right.
in the making, and we really had no timeline. We started these brands off with my capital, my partner's capital,
Mhm.
investors that come along the way, but we really never had anyone's hand in our back to do anything. It was more
Okay.
about like, do what you like, have the culture of the company and the purpose of the company and the products all be something that you can be proud of.
Okay.
And that's really been our 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 divining rod, our guidepost for building the brand. And fortunately, the um, the luxury high-end rum category, the sipping rum category, has really exploded over the last 5 or 6 years here and in Europe and in Asia. And then people and our products have been super well received, super well awarded, and frankly, even more than that, we've developed a team that is probably as far as all the companies that I've been associated with, is probably the most fun, most talented team I've ever seen, let alone been associated with. And I could brag about them because, as I said, they're smarter and more capable than I am. So it's fun to watch them work, and they're they're a combination of experienced veterans and young, energetic people that the born digitals that collide with the people that the gray hairs like me. And so the combination is really exciting to watch, and people seem to like what we're doing, and we certainly love the people that we're working with and our consumers.
I love the story that you shared, and there's so many questions to unpack. And a couple that are coming to mind, Steve, is the fact that Hemingway family had come to you because they were interested in growing the literacy, the conservation. And does that aspect of their work, your work, this trifecta, is it in place today as part of your brand? So that recognition, not just a wonderful, and for our listeners, this is a glass of rum. I couldn't do this podcast today without having a nice glass.
Yeah.
Is this is part of this literacy, the conservation? Is it still one of those pillars of your brand to give back to the community and to help solve some of the problems that are going on locally and around the country?
Oh yeah, it's at the epicenter of everything we do. And so a lot of times you'll have these associations with, we'll call it a quote unquote celebrity, and it's kind of a licensing agreement where they're really not connected. We're partners in this deal, and
Mhm.
and from day one, we've worked together to put the money that they derive from our brand together with our money
Mhm.
to create a positive impact on the world. And I go out to Montana where many of them live every July, and meet with the family, and we go through it. And then a few times throughout the year, we get together, but we're constantly planning on how we're going to spend our money, what we're going to do, where we're going to, what are the things that are near and dear to our hearts. And it was an interesting, I don't know if it's interesting. It just hit me when I started the brand. I had this kind of geeky idea that every time you sold a bottle, that it was a moment to make an impact. And so I thought that if we could ever sell 1 million bottles and put $1 million to work to make a positive impact, that would be a plateau. And that was my quiet mission that I never told anybody,
Oh, wow.
except for my son. And then I realized during COVID that we had blown by our 1 million bottle mark, and we had given $3 million to causes by then, that we hit my mark and I didn't even recognize it. So now we're on our $5 million milestone. But really it is, it's at the epicenter of it. We have both on the whiskey side and the rum side, we have we spend a ton of time, and it's because it's in the DNA of our company. That's the way we operate. One of the things that we spend a lot of time with is water conservation, reef restoration, coral reef restoration. And so on that side, ocean conservation and water conservation and clarity, both fresh and salt water, has been a big deal. We've given hundreds of thousands of dollars to causes related to between the Guy Harvey Foundation to all the reef restoration, most of the reef restoration groups in the Florida Keys and elsewhere, to try and solve the problems, because they solve a lot of problems with the actual ocean clarity and fish and plastics and so on and so forth. We do a lot of fisheries management research. And then that's on one side. On the other side, we spend a ton of money on veterans and how to help those folks out that have helped us so much, and we're just privileged to be associated with them. But so that's the kind of the overarching philosophy on our conservation and philanthropy. But then beneath it, we think of our brand as like an old school rock band, right? Where you have to earn your customers one market at a time. And there's no quick way to do it. So when we get into communities, we spend a lot of time there where we become part of the fabric of the community. So in every community we're in, we're connected with the philanthropic and charitable causes that are associated with those communities. And so they know that they can count on us when we're there. And so there's probably another 100 different philanthropic, charitable efforts that we're associated with as well.
Okay.
But it's the long story longer is that everything we do is around that. It's ingrained in our culture.
Okay. No, I love it. And some of the initiatives that you've chatted about and introduced, especially around conservation, we did a whole series with the National Marine Sanctuary. So I love that connection. I am curious, and some of our listeners are going to ask, Howard, why do you have a rum distiller on your podcast? And one aspect of the reasoning behind it, one is I knew your PR guy, Clay Abney. He's a member of the Outdoor Writers Association of America, as am I. And one piece has always fascinated me is, you and I shared, we have cups of coffee in the morning. I probably have as much as you do. But in the afternoon, it's nice to sit back and enjoy an adult beverage. Now, if we are outside, whether we're hunting, whether we are fishing, inshore, offshore, skiing, we come back from this, or sailing, we come back from this adventure, and we sit back and we start to tell stories.
Right.
And that's what really I thought was the real connective tissue here, is how does this sipping rum and the varieties that you are offering to the community, how does that play into the the stories people are telling after the adventure. Because just being able to sit back and enjoy the sunset in Key West at that that thing right at the very end, I can't the buoy.
Mallory Square. Oh, the southernmost point. Yeah.
Yeah, that and it's just being able to enjoy a nice sunset and an adult beverage, and I'm curious how this mystique has played into, how you are marketing and branding this rum. It's because it's not a rum you go and have a fruity cocktail with.
No, it was specifically designed to be sort of a portfolio of high-end sipping rums that you could also mix if you like
Yeah,
to kind of to treat yourself.
right,
But it wasn't one that you wanted to overpower um, with a lot of sugar and flavors and so on. You wanted to taste the rum.
right.
But the idea around the rum and its attachment to storytelling and adventure, it was almost adventure started before the rum. This is me and my partners and I are all we call ourselves outdoor dogs and not indoor dogs, right? So
Mhm.
we're the ones that we try to fish all over the world, where we hike and hunt and so on and so forth, and it's and usually the day starts with as we talked about, a nice cup of coffee, and then once you kind of it's the perfect opportunity. There are certain um, um, intersections of your day and your life that lend themselves to these moments. And generally, there's the beginning of the day, there's the adventure, there's the end of the day, there's the storytelling, and those stories, don't just have to do with that day; they have to do with yesterday, tomorrow, whatever they might be. And usually, as I said, there's coffee at one point, and then there's a cocktail that kind of lets everybody unwind a bit.
Mhm.
And then everybody's tongue gets a little loose, and then they start telling stories and slapping backs, and then that's where the magic happens. And so we internally considered ourselves an adventure brand before we ever started this brand, but we never called ourselves an adventure brand because we didn't think anybody knew what an adventure brand was.
Mhm.
But we did. And so that's where I think all this comes together. And I know in my life, there's these times in the cockpit of the boat, on the way in from fishing, there's around the campfire. Those are all these magic moments all over the world. And that's kind of it's not hard to market yourself using that imagery if you live and breathe that every day.
And I love it as I went off onto the website, and there's definitely a lot of water-based imagery there.
Right.
And just and rum it's equated with the Navy. I mean, this is the what was it, the British Navy they had their, you're gonna know the whatever the measurement was, but they had their allotment of rum.
It's called a tot.
Tot, all right. So I
That's
learned
right.
something today. I love this. So I have my tot of rum, and I just thought it's wonderful to be able to get out there. You have your adventure, and you come back and you share those stories. And how does that fit into, or actually, a better question would be, I mean, Pilar, Ernest Hemingway's boat. How did that get settled on as the part of this brand and this logo and this imagery of outdoor adventure and tying that back to Ernest Hemingway?
And yeah, we didn't want to. We always try to make things that have a right to exist. Right? They should there's a reason for them to be. So they're not just following other people. They're not just a face in the crowd. And sometimes they're really successful, and other times they're failures. But
Mhm.
in this case, we looked at it and said the we wanted to build a product that was connected to Ernest Hemingway and sort of his wanderlust,
Mhm.
him going to different ports of call in Africa and the Caribbean and all over the world to extract some kind of a engagement, some kind of a connection. And so we didn't really want to build an estate rum that was stagnant. And there's plenty of great estate rums. I'm not putting them down. That's
Sure.
from one place at one altitude with one still, with one raw material. That there was probably a different way to look at it by making our own rum, but also sourcing rums from different ports of call throughout
Mhm.
the Caribbean and Central America. And then, and so this idea around this wanderlust around this Caribbean based, this Central America kind of connected us to how Ernest Hemingway connected with the Pilar. And he used it as his transport to all these different places. And that was where he would enjoy different cultures and so on and extract the best out of those. And so that's how it kind of came together, which was this vehicle that connect the wanderlust of how we make our rums and finish them in this very sophisticated way. And also the way Ernest lived his life and used his boat, the Pilar, to kind of transport him from different places. And so if you think about the way these things tie together, you have this Ernest Hemingway who goes to all these different places and experiences all these different cultures and food and so on and so forth. But then he also comes back and then he dives into this incredibly detailed craft of writing and being able to talk about his experience and so on. So this is a bit geeky, but it's the way we think.
Sure.
Is that we source all these rums and we find these honey barrels of exactly what we want from different places that have different taste profiles and different raw materials and different altitudes. And then we bring them back and then we go geeky like Ernest Hemingway. We blending these rums into something that's good is like trying to put together a symphony. And then we take these rums, blend them, and then we finish them in wine and in whiskey barrels and sherry casks and in cognac and Armagnac to kind of get that perfect solution. And so it's that was our sort of deep dive. If you wanted to go into the beautiful mind shack with us,
Sure.
That's what really got us charged. And it wasn't that we made anything up. It was, we really like this stuff. And what was really nice is when we went through all this stuff with Patrick Hemingway, Ernest's only living son, he's 95, he's still alive. I had a barbecue with him in July.
Oh, wow.
And so, but when we first presented it to him, we went through about a 3-hour presentation on his house in Montana, and he didn't say a word. And he turned around, he said, "This is fabulous. I didn't know half of this stuff about my dad. Can I keep this presentation?" He's a fabulous guy. He's really, really nice. We, as I said, we get together between my family and their family every summer. But it was nice that he saw it, and it's nice when we make products. We start with having conversations with the Hemingway family about what we're thinking, and they almost always add to it and say, "Hey, you might think about this because this was what my dad would have liked. This is where he went. You might want to do this." And so it's a legitimate collaboration between us, and the family loves it. And a lot of them get involved and show up to events and help with innovation.
I love that. And you don't often hear this kind of deep collaboration. Sometimes it's we make a note of what their interests are, their ideas, but then somebody goes off and does whatever they want to do. But my sense is, and I'm getting this from you, this is a very close-knit collaboration. It's like family. And the third part of the family, your master distiller, how has their craft and creativity evolved as you are crafting these premium sipping rums?
I'm not sure. These, as I said, when it comes to craftsmen, I get goosebumply because
Okay.
they are so good that I think Ron and his family, they just let me see a couple pages of the book at a time is what I'm thinking, because we go to at our distillery in Key West and our bigger facility in Central Florida, he's probably got 20 or 30 things going at the same time that he's working on, finishes and different types of rums and so on. And I'll go there, and I always, I'll go into his lab, and he's a very unassuming guy, but he's incredible. And so is his son is a master distiller, well known. His other son is is works for us as well. Very highly regarded spirits influencer.
Mhm.
And but I'll go in there and he'll go, try this. And I was like, wow, what is that finished in? And he'll come up with something that it's just like, what made you think of that? I have no idea. He goes, I worked on it about 15 years ago, and then I had a friend that did this, and then they'll put it together. I always say that, I always tell people that when you go to Ron's lab, if you stay there for a half an hour, you need an Uber. If you stay there for an hour, you need an ambulance.
I love it. I love it.
But at the evolution, I think the evolution came from Ron and his family has probably never worked with a group together that let them do anything that they wanted.
Mhm.
Right? So it's more about just not putting guardrails on their innovation and being able to fail and then fail 10 times and succeed with one, then try it and see if people like it and then grow that and do it again. And
Mhm.
so but that's kind of the way we are in our entire company. It's you're allowed to make mistakes as long as they're honest mistakes.
I love that. And just, you kind of just keep tweaking it. Some little change, you never know what is going to result is because you've taken that one little step. With my coaching clients, I call that the 1% rule. Howard's 1%. Just make 1% effort in something that you're interested in. You never know where you're going to end up.
Yeah, I mean it's the one that we the very limited edition we did, which was the Earnest edition, and it came in almost like a Louis tray type of bottle and so on. The idea to finish it and not just source the rums and create the rums at the right age, because old doesn't mean better. It's
Right.
better means better, and it could be 7 years old and better than a 30-year-old. So just being able to understand that, and then the timing and combination of how to finish that in cognac and Armagnac barrels to get it perfect.
Mhm.
And now I just saw this the other day where on eBay, they're selling these bottles for like $3,000, $4,000 a bottle. And it's like Ron's called me up and said, "Oh, I should have saved a few for myself."
There you go. There you go. So I'm curious about the the brand itself and how you promote it. I mean, I'm sure you have distributors and they're out trying to get the bottles into the best restaurants and some of the best pubs throughout the world. But I know you have a facility down in Key West, kind of like a tasting room. Is that it's a part of the? I believe it's a part of the distillery.
Yeah, we have a fully functioning distillery there.
Okay.
And then on one side, there's the outpost, which is where we sell all the gear and have a bunch of other stuff. And then we have what's called the Hemingway Social Club.
Okay.
And Hemingway Social Club is a fully functioning bar, but it only sells our products. And it's so that you can, after you go through the distillery and go through the bottling and figure out how it's made and learn about all of it in
Mhm.
Hemingway, that you can taste it and buy the product. But yeah, that's there. And actually, we just took over some more space down there, so we're expanding.
Okay. What do you hear from your friends, acquaintances? You are very much a part of the outdoor community. As you said, you and your friends, you're like the outdoor dogs. You're looking for outdoor adventure. When people come back to you and say, "Hey, Steve, this is pretty good stuff," what are they saying to you about this experience trying the rums like Papa's Pilar?
Yeah, I don't know. Most of these products, they really do, and I know I try to, pardon the pun, try to distill these things down to what makes a brand um, interesting, and some of it is the product, which is the quality of the product that's in the bottle itself,
Hmm.
and the pyramid of products, so that people know they look at it and say, I know what I'm buying and why.
Hmm.
Because a lot of companies have like 20 different versions of what they sell, and you don't and people don't know what's the difference and why they're buying it and what's different. So they don't buy anything.
Hmm.
So that the product pyramid is important. The process is it's really cool. It's like, how do you make this? Is there attention to detail? Why does the product come out the way who are the people that are making it? What are their credentials? And and do they have the ability to continue to surprise me?
Hmm.
And then it's the personality, which is What is the culture of the business? Are these nice people? Are they doing good things for the world? Are they connected? Are there people that I can relate to? Is the brand somebody that I can relate to? And it's been interesting because of the Hemingway brand and I think the team that we put together, there seems to be a gravitational pull between the entire community towards a well-made product by the people that I think are geniuses,
Mhm.
and the brand and the personality itself, so that it's a two-way street. We have this like the most influential people in the world that send us notes and ask for product, and we have a gravitational pull to what they're all about, and they have a gravitational pull to what we're all about.
Mhm.
And so it's very authentic and a very easy connection. We've never recruited an influencer ever. They've all just been friends that have just said, "Hey," I was just with somebody in Key West yesterday, and he's a guy that's on he ran a show on the highway on Sirius, a guy named Stormy Warren. So Stormy's a
Mhm.
friend, and and I met him at a songwriters convention. He's very well known in the music business. And
Mhm.
the first thing he said to me was, "Why the hell did you take the chain off the bottle?" And I said, "It was an accident." All right. And so, and then we put it back on. And that's how we started the conversation. And now we're just best friends. And he's a part of the brand. And then all these people in the fishing industry and in the outdoor industry, it's always just been a collection of buddies.
Mhm.
And I think you might be talking to another gentleman that works with us who came into our ecosystem as a buddy. He used to run the International Game Fishing Association,
Okay.
Mike, and so he was kind of the don of what I called the Aqua Mafia, right? All these guys around the world, and he was like our biggest ambassador without us knowing it.
Mhm.
And then he retired from the International Game Fishing Association. I said, "You got to come and work with us and be in charge of our communities and conservation effort." So these things just take on a life of their own, and really we try to steer it a little bit, but and not really. We don't really have that militant corporate mandate thing. We just do stuff that feels good, and we stay away from stuff that feels icky.
I love that because in some ways it does feel like being on a sailboat is sometimes you have to go where the wind takes you. And you don't have to drive hard in one direction. You just, whatever the wind is, you just adjust your sails and see where you end up. As you kind
Right.
of look back at your career and where you're going with it now, and we didn't talk too much about the Hemingway whiskey, which it could be a whole other episode for that matter. But where do you see this love affair with brands like this and the good work the company is doing with the Hemingway family to not only provide a great product but also to make a difference in the communities around the world? Where do you see yourself going? Is this just a labor of love? You're going to continue with it, or do you have is there a vision board somewhere in your office there?
Well, I have my whiteboard, which has a whole bunch of things that my grandkids drew on it, so I won't show it to you, but it's one that
Okay.
I've kept from businesses that I've built over the last 25 years.
Yeah.
But I don't think we have a we just try to do better across the board every year. And the thing is, I always tell people that if you build a great company that stands for great things, then you're going to have class problems in the future, right? Is
Mhm.
you're going to have then you have to decide which way do you take it, where do you go, how do you expand, and and right now I think the mission is the whiskey was always on the drawing board
Mhm.
for us because I think that, and this is all sort of inside stuff, so don't tell anybody.
I
No,
won't
I'm
tell
joking.
anybody. To our
Yeah.
listeners, lips are sealed, folks.
So there was always this in my mind, going back 10 to 12 years, there was always this confluence of dark spirits that
Mhm.
rum and whiskey, American whiskey had similar cues and they were adjacent to each other.
Mhm.
And there's wood and there's depth and there's the dark spirits and there's master distillers and taste profiles can overlap a little bit. We finish most of our rums in whiskey barrels. We finish our whiskey and the rye that we have now, which by the way just got awarded the number one rye in the world by Whiskey Advocate, which is go
Love
figure.
rye. I love rye.
Yeah, it was, and that was, we got into it because it had a reason to exist, but it's finished in our rum barrels.
Okay.
But there is this migration back and forth. And so that ecosystem of how to advance those products and those categories, we've just scratched the surface on that. And I think that there's so many cool things that could come out of that in terms of products and markets. And then our demand for our product in Europe and in Asia is super, super robust. So we'll continue to do that. It's just, but as I said, if you go back to this silly thing that I said to myself about 1,000,000 moments to make an impact,
Mhm.
that's at the very epicenter of this, is like, how do I work with people? How do we work together with people that we really like, with partners that we really like, to do cool stuff that other people haven't done? And have a purpose, have a reason to exist, and get up and feel good about it. And we've been fortunate that that feeling has allowed us to punch above our weight and get some of the most talented people I've ever seen, and most and passionate people associated with our business. And so I'm knocking on something that's wood around me, that there is that continues. But I don't know if there's a grand plan for world domination, but I think internally, what I've said is that I'd like to be the world's most inspirational and aspirational super premium or luxury dark spirits business. And really, those two, inspirational, aspirational, are the key words in that for me anyway. It's like, I like what they make. I like who they are. I like what they do. Everything about it feels good. That was my mission.
All right. So, Steve, before we head out, and I'm putting you on the spot, but you're a CEO caliber guest, so this ought to be a walk in the park for you. If you had an aha moment, just as you kind of look back in the work you have been doing and the work you are doing today, or a piece of advice or book, a quote that really you would love to like share with our listeners, what do you think that might be?
I don't think I've ever done anything. I've never done anything for money solely.
Okay.
And that seems like a very well-trodden comment. I haven't. It tends, the things I tend to get involved with tend to be either super philanthropic, or they somehow become somewhat lucrative. But I think do things for the right reasons and the other one is, and money, it buys you some freedom, but I've never done anything solely for money, or even, that wasn't even the pointy end of the spear.
Mm-hmm.
And then associate yourself with people that are rooting for you to succeed.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think people I don't think they understand how important that is.
Mm-hmm.
They have people in their ecosystem, business wise and personal, that they know are not rooting for them to succeed. And they should just sort of move away from that and
Mm-hmm.
get around people that are rooting for success, and you're rooting for them to succeed.
Mm-hmm.
And that tends to make everything kind of, a lot easier, a lot better, a lot more fun.
Okay. No, I love that. And as a coach myself, that's a message I think clients really need to hear, because they're struggling, but you want people in your corner that are helping you, but you also want to help them to succeed as well. And I think that's a wonderful gift to share. Before we head out now, I know you have a LinkedIn presence. We're going to share the website. So if our listeners would like to learn more about Papa's Pilar Rum, we're going to send them to the website at papaspilar.com. Are you okay if perhaps there's another podcast or an interviewer heard this episode, they want to reach out to you? Is LinkedIn the best way to do that?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. So we will
For the longest time, I built, together with two guys from Google and my other partner, Alex, I built a technology accelerator, and we've launched like 700 businesses.
Yeah.
And I never had a LinkedIn presence until, I don't know, for about 5 or 6 years. And I was just this guy that was off the grid. And so when I put my LinkedIn profile up, they thought it was doomsday. But anyway, so yes, that's the easiest way to get in touch.
Well, listen, Steve, we really want to thank you for spending your time as we had also shared at the beginning, it's past 5 o'clock somewhere, and I'm sure you have other things on your plate that you want to do today. But really, I hope you enjoyed your time on the podcast and sharing about your passion and about Papa's Pilar Rum and the relationship with the Hemingway family and with your master distiller. And it just sounds like a fascinating story. And I have a good reason now to really get down to Key West, because I think that's got to be a fascinating place to visit, the Hemingway Social Club.
Yeah, come on down. We'd love to have you. It's been my pleasure. Thanks a lot.
Fantastic. Listen, stay in the line. We're going to do a quick close, and then you and I can have a final chat. Okay?
Cool. Sounds good.
All right. Okay, folks, we have just been chatting with Steve Groth, Papa Pilar's CEO and chief strategist and founder and CEO of the Mahalo Spirits Group and the founder of the Hemingway Whiskey Company. What a great story today about the history of Papa's Pilar Rum, how this idea came into fruition, and really this focus on not only making a premium dark spirit, but also having the passion to want to make a difference out in the community through their charitable efforts. Now, we do hope you enjoyed this first of 4 episodes with Papa's Pilar Rum. We're going to talk about the distillation process. We're going to talk about recipes using rum, and we're also going to talk about more of the stories, this idea that you're going to come back from this adventure and just sit around the campfire, sit around the kitchen table, the restaurant, wherever that might be, enjoy a good spirit and just share stories. And that's the piece that really fascinated me. And I'm so grateful that Steve and his team were open to having this little adventure on the Outdoor Adventure Series podcast. Now, do go out and visit their website at papaspilar.com. We're going to provide a backlink in our show notes, and we'll also provide a backlink to Steve's LinkedIn profile. As for us, you can find us on the outdooradventureseries.com. We have our Facebook and LinkedIn pages, and we are on all of the major podcast networks. So wherever you get your podcasts, please like, share, and comment. We would love to hear from you. Okay, folks, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, go out there, have a phenomenal day. And we will see you on a future episode of the Outdoor Adventure Series podcast. Take care now. Papa's Pilar Rum, the sponsor of this episode of the Outdoor Adventure Series, is an ultra-premium rum brand inspired by one of the world's greatest adventurers, Ernest Hemingway, and was crafted to harness the spirit of adventure. Enjoy your next adventure wherever it awaits.